Do you have a GTX 1060, 1660, 1660 Ti, or 2060? Because we're going to do some video benchmarking and some graphs we have to show. So let's just jump into it. So first up, real quick, the specs. We did a previous video just showing the RTX 2060 with some PvP benchmarks. And we have the PC 9900K and then the 2060, and then here's the 4 graphics cards we're going to be testing in this video. And then we also have overclocks between 5 and 8%, plus they're factory overclocked. So here's all the specs for that. And drivers 425.31, we didn't mention that last video, but basically we previously benchmarked PvP, all 4 maps, 4 of the 5 maps, and then we did a bunch of different testing for each of the different zombie domination fights. So there's that. Here are some of the numbers from the previous video. We saw between 119 and 142 FPS in the PvP matching, so pretty interesting. So now we're testing the other cards. We're going to compare that to these 4 different cards in the actual World War Z benchmark. They have a little 60-second benchmark, so it's the exact same every single time, and it was pretty similar results. We saw, ignore all the red text for just a minute, but basically we saw 133 FPS between 119 and 142 again in the PvP mode, and then we see 126 in the Ultra benchmark for 1080p. So this is for the 2060 card. So pretty good number there, and we also have some video for this. So we get to see around a 1965, it jumps down to 1950 a little bit on the boost clock, and then the GPU usage was around 88%, CPU usage was around 30, it went up and down a little bit. VRAM was around 2500 megabytes, so, and then 8000 for the RAM roughly, so pretty good there. And then we're going to jump down to skip the low settings real quick. We'll jump down to the 1660 Ti, about a 15 FPS drop, so around a 12% drop percentage wise, and we get to see some video of that at 130, and you can check out, we'll have a link to this video without me talking, and you can just check out the numbers yourself. So the 1660 Ti was around a 1920 boost clock, and we saw around a 91% GPU utilization, as well as 25% on the CPU roughly, give or take. It jumped up and down a little bit here and there, so pretty interesting. And let's now jump over to the next card from the 1660 Ti. We dropped down from a 111 down to a 104. This was about a 6% drop to the 1660, and we see some video at around 250 for this card. And we see around a 2010 boost clock for the 1660 and around a 92% GPU utilization. So these weren't quite getting 100% utilization, so like some previous benchmarks, it was day one. We might need a patch or 2, so for that. And then CPU was around 20%, so the CPU kept dropping down a little bit, with GPU being the bottleneck obviously. And also 2500 on the VRAM, and some other interesting numbers is jumping down to the 1060. So we go 104 to 89. This was about a 14% drop, pretty big drop there. And again, ultra settings on the benchmark, and we'll jump that over to 405. A little bit of the fighting going on, and it boosted up to 1974. And we also saw around a 93% GPU utilization. It tells you at the end of this little benchmark, it gives you a good percentage. And the CPU is around 15%. We're just eyeballing the CPU utilization just with the numbers. And also, what else do we have? Around 8000 on the RAM, and 24 on the VRAM. So pretty interesting numbers overall. You can check out your card and check out the actual little benchmark. You go to video settings, and then I think it's F8. You'll see in the bottom there's a little video benchmark button you can click, and you can check your settings. So pretty interesting benchmarks, pretty similar numbers compared to the PvP maps versus just the benchmark, which went through them all a little bit. So we also have 2 other numbers we didn't mention, as well as the red text we'll go over in just a second as well. So we did the lowest settings. We saw around 232 FPS, and this was GPU utilization wasn't quite going all the way to top. It was only 69% GPU utilization, so that's what these numbers are. The PvP map we saw around 85 to 90%, just eyeballing it, whereas we could tell from the benchmark it gave us an actual number, 88 to 93 from the 2060, 1660 all the way to the 1060. So those were the numbers for that. And the 1060, I didn't jot down the number, so I missed that. I think it was around 50 to 60%. So that was or this one was around 80-ish%. So for the 1060, so pretty interesting numbers overall. So you'll basically, if you want 144 FPS, some really high 10 FPS shooting FPSs, then you'll want to drop those low settings if you have a 1060. And even with the 2060, you weren't quite able to get that 144 on Ultra, so you might need to do high depending on what map you're on. You want to put settings for the lowest FPS, so definitely high is the best you'll get with a 2060, otherwise you'll be going past the 2060 into 2070 territory. So pretty good FPS for World War Z. You didn't need too much of a demanding card, especially you'll get easily 60 FPS if you're not into the PvP modes. You can definitely do PvE at 60 FPS and get some really smooth gameplay, and you probably won't notice anything if you're not too much into competitiveness and getting high kills in matches. So 90 FPS is pretty good even for a 1060, so it's a pretty good graphics card still. And that was pretty much all. The Shadowplay, we also, all these numbers on this graph are without Shadowplay, so we did second testing. So the Shadowplay video you see now is around a 0 to 3% performance reduction. The 0%, some of the graphics cards you didn't really notice performance impact because we weren't quite at 100% in the first place. Temperatures and some of the boost clocks may have affected that, so not too much of a Shadowplay performance impact on this, whereas we saw around a 4 to 11% on the 2060 on the different PvP maps. So it could be hit or miss depending on if you're doing the PvP maps versus just doing a benchmark or a PvE episode run through or something like that. So not too big a deal with the Shadowplay results, but just wanted to mention that as well. And with that, that pretty much sums up all the PvP and the benchmark for the 4 different graphics cards. You can check out the other video if you want to check out all the PvP testing we did with the RTX 2060. And other than that, this was your second video, and we'll have another episode tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific with some more tech and game news. And we have Lulu saying benchmarks. So yeah, lots of benchmarks today, 2 videos. We kind of split it up to do some more concise benchmarking. So, and with that, we will be signing out. Pew 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 pew.